Bisexuals. What the most surprising difference between dating each gender? What was shockingly similar? I'm a female. Women were more likely to be spontaneous and want to do things, like travel to the next town to eat at a fancy restaurant. Women seemed also more confrontational, and I had many more arguments. Women were more likely to be biased against my sexual orientation. I don't date by girls. Or, you're really a lesbian or straight girl looking for attention. Men were impressed because I had skills like cooking, cleaning, etc. The men I've dated have seemed to be much more laid back and cool with just sitting around and playing video games. We didn't have to constantly be doing something. The women I've dated have been much more possessive and been more sexual. The women have been more sympathetic to my everyday little problems. However, the men have seemed more supportive of big life decisions. Story 2. By trans girl here, dating women was fun but always a bit short-lived. I'm attracted to women who are basically like me, typical girly girl. It was like dating my best girlfriend but with sex thrown in. It was very equal. We made decisions together and would always go out together. A lot of mind games though, like we always expected each other to know what the other was thinking. There was a lot of codependency as well, which is probably what caused most of the breakups. We just became a unit almost instantly, and sometimes it would feel like we'd lose ourselves in the relationship. I did love shopping and partying together though. It would be like just a night out with one of the girls. Also, to answer your question, I'd still take the passive role during sex. The men I've dated were the complete opposite. It would be less equal in that they would be the more dominant one in the relationship. They paid for the meals, they generally lead the way, but there was also a lot of independence. I was able to do what I wanted to do on my own time, and he would be able to as well. I also liked the fact that it never felt like we were competing against each other because we were in different lanes, so to speak. The only thing that really stayed constant was the love that we felt for one another. They love in different ways, but it's still love all the same. Story 3. I was surprised at first. Guy here. Background. Gender really doesn't matter to me. Yeah, looks matter to a point, but personality is what my main attraction is. First person I dated was a guy, was a virgin, and we were laying on bed and he came on to me. Party. Me, Z, and Jay on a bed. I was getting ready to sleep. Was 18. Jay started touching my leg, but pulled away. Thought it was an accident. 10 minutes later and several touches later, he goes up my boxes and touches me. D. Told Z to leave. I was going to bed. Z was too drunk to even know what was happening and left. Great experience all around. Spent next 2 weeks making sure I was invited to parties with Jay, and was jealous when he was dancing with another dude, and it hurt like hell. My first crush? We slept together that same night and just cuddled. Dated for several months, then broke it off due to a huge fight and things said that couldn't be taken back no matter how much I wanted to. Sometimes when cuddling he'd come on to me, sometimes I'd say no, but then sex happened anyway. Afterwards met my current so. She's awesome, both virgins. Well, I was a virgin to women. Together 9 years almost. We're in a sort of open thing. We date other people but don't actively look for people. We did at first, but over time it was just easier to let things develop naturally. No jealousy or anything between the both of us. In fact, oddly enough, normally after sleeping over another person's house, me or her will start a role play and relive the night. In the end, I've probably been with 15 men and around 60-ish women over the past 10 years. She's been with an equal amount for the most part. Why the backstory? Well, because it's both our takes. I was surprised in the end because of how many guys are not into but stuff, giving or receiving. In fact, originally with Jay, it made me think I had something wrong with me because I wanted him to bang me. He also didn't want anything in him. Well, after meeting others, it's actually pretty common. I was surprised by how sensual guys can really be. Cuddling was important. Kissing was important. Talking was important. Being together was important. In a lot of cases, sex consisted of stuff when I was younger I wouldn't even consider sex. Being in the open relationship dating, I would be able to have very deep emotional relationships with people. However, for guys, it was impossible to convince them you weren't secretly gay. Explain you actively also seek out and bang women. Denial. Say you're bisexual. Denial and lying to yourself. Say you're uncomfortable with this because the other person's making it hard to just be chill. Then it's your wife that's the problem. When this started, I often shrugged it off, but after some really big headaches. Once the conversation happens, if we aren't in complete agreement, within 10 minutes I'm leaving and never contacting them again or even replying. It's a bloody nightmare. Guys are insecure assholes. Some aren't, and I honestly miss them, and some are still good friends. But this is the reason I don't actively seek guys. With women, I was less surprised, but still surprised. They are cold physically, but some are also mentally. But I like that. I like warming someone up. Women also tend to oddly want sex more, and more varied sex. That's what surprised me. You feel guys should be always thinking about sex, and women it should be a chore to even get them to throw you a bone. In my experience, guys do want it more, but it's not as often as you'd think, and women want sex all the time. The only exception being periods, and for some it's not an exception, and perhaps if you don't chive together. I've always been good at adapting. If something doesn't work, I'm trying something else. Constantly listening, constantly feeling muscle twitch, constantly evaluating, and doing what gets the best reaction, and yes, asking. Most times it works. Women are easier to please than men. Hands down. Women will tell you what they want, or if you ask, will be happy to let you know. A guy won't. A guy will let you do things, make them come, say it was great, and then blow about it months later. Again, something I would have assumed be the opposite. Women also tend to be jealous, but less jealous than guys, which also again surprised me. Hint: if a girl asks if you checked out the waitress, own it and joke about it and ask her if she also checked. I feel women are mad when you try to hide it, rather than admit it, and when you're open, jealously tends to not be a thing. Guys, however, will. It's hard to explain. A girl will get mad. A girl will cry. A girl will leave you. A guy will get mad. A guy will cry in anger. A guy won't leave you. Story 4. I've had more successful relationships with bisexuals than with straight women or gay men. I think the surprising thing for me was how similarly possessive people are when they are fixated on a single gender. Neither gays nor straights often seemed comfortable with the idea I could ever be intimate with the other gender. They seemed to tie promiscuity to the concept that I would find another sex more attractive and bail on a relationship for that reason and no other, even though I'm usually monogamous with most of my partners. Differences between the sexes. I'm married, so it has been a while. Men seem to be more adventurous kissers and willing to try new things in bed. They really like not having to do the whole mating dance around whether or not you are flirting the right way. It keeps things fun. The downside about men? Shakespeare never slept with men, or that old saw about the fury of a woman's scorn never would have been written. Women can be vicious and tenacious, but men deal with scorn in terms of scorched earth and finality. Women tend to be much more into tying emotional weight to things. Not emotions themselves, but more like this scarf is worth 3 emotional units, and it is much better for me to have those emotional units focused on happiness rather than being upset. Dealing with women is like trying to do calculus or linear algebra encompassing all of those variables, knowing you are going to miss some of those variables. Downside of women? Obsessing over how they change over time and how it just adds multipliers to that emotional algebra. Upsides of women? They also like giving themselves over to experiencing their emotions more than men. That is a huge positive and balances out everything else. Story 5. I'm a dude. Have had 7/8 relationships, about half straight women, the rest were a range of sexualities. Quite honestly, they're all highly unique, but for the purposes of this question, I've broken them down somewhat reasonable lines. In my personal experience of very limited sample sizes. Woman, totally straight, slow relationship start, slow relationship end. More accepting / into the man aspect of my life. We're generally totally cool with it, and, in my own personal experience, all of them found it a turn on. Easier to deal with society's gender roles. Hallmark romantic. Liked cuddles. Woman, by quick relationship start, slow relationship end. Awesome all around. Easier to pick up thirds by coming for either gender. Wish I'd held on to that. Much more like hanging out with a super chill chick who's up for anything than Hallmark romantic. Exciting. Liked cuddles. Man, totally gay, quick relationship start, slow relationship end. Less accepting / into the straight aspect of my life. Generally insecure about it, not a turn on. A lot more freeing not having to deal with gender roles. Romantic in our own way, rather than Hallmark. Liked cuddles. Man, by quick relationship start, quick relationship end. Awesome all around. Less easy to pick up thirds, but a surprising number of girls were interested in attention from 2 dudes. Much more like intimately hanging out with a bro than Hallmark romantic. Liked cuddles. Long story short, everyone likes cuddles. Story 6. Lady bisexual here. In my experience, women are more creative in bed, and they spend more time on build-up than the main event than men do. The girls I've been with seem very intent on making sure I'm getting off, and guys seem more focused on getting themselves off. Also, when I would hang out with the girl I was dating, it felt like a friendship all the time, even though there was a strong spark. When she talked to me, I really listened rather than just thinking about hooking up with her. When I would go on dates with guys, I'd be more focused on sex and getting to the sex. Though I only really dated one woman, hooked up with about 6, so I don't have a great scope to the two.